Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pinnacle Fraudcast. I'm Faith Saifedine, Communication Strategist for the firm. Today, we're joined by Deanna Snow, the Director of Treasury Management Analyst Performance for Pinnacle. Thanks for joining me, Deanna.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Deanna, we have a serious fraud alert to talk about today. Thieves are using Intuit's transaction ID to get around ACH block and filter. Tell us more about what you are seeing.
Absolutely. So what we are seeing right now is that Intuit's company ID or originator ID is being used fraudulently. And this is impactful for our clients because a lot of our clients have a service called ACH block and filter to protect their accounts. And the way that service works is we build filters to allow certain companies to debit our client's account, and we block other companies from debiting our client's account. And so when you have a filter built to allow Intuit's company ID to debit your account, you think that those transactions using Intuit's company ID are safe, and you allow them to come through, and they don't create an exception, and typically you're not reviewing those. And so what we're seeing is that thieves have kind of gotten a hold of Intuit's company ID, and they are originating ACH transactions that are debiting our clients' accounts, and they're getting through because the filter is in place to allow Intuit's ID to debit the account. And so what we're seeing is kind of a flurry of transactions that we believe could potentially be fraudulent. They're very hard to identify because the thieves are using names that are not Intuit, so they're not using Intuit's name. And that is meaningful because Intuit works with a lot of third parties, and they let these third parties transact business on their behalf using their originator ID. So clients aren't typically accustomed to seeing Intuit when they see a debit post to their account. And so thieves have kind of caught on to that, and they are mimicking those kind of known transactions, and they're flying under the radar. We're not seeing currently anything that is a large amount. We're seeing $300 to $400 is kind of normal, but we're seeing numerous transactions. And so an account may have 6 or 7 or 9 or 10 transactions post, and that adds up pretty quickly. So that's what we're seeing currently.
So now that we know what the problem is, and I thank you for explaining that, what exactly is Pinnacle doing to protect clients?
Absolutely. So one of the first steps that we've taken is to identify our clients who use ACH block and filter, who have a filter in place for this specific company ID that Intuit uses, and we have taken those filters and we have added a 1 penny limit. And essentially what that does is as transactions come through using Intuit's company ID, it will force an exception that the client will be alerted to, and they'll have an opportunity to review that transaction and kind of determine whether it is legitimate and pay it or return it if it's fraudulent. And so for a period of time while this is kind of going on, we are going to ask clients to take a look at all of those transactions using that specific ID and determine if they are legitimate or not.
That's great, having those systems in place so that clients know that we are definitely working on their behalf. What can clients do to protect themselves? I'm sure they're asking that question too. So what can they do to protect themselves?
Absolutely. So, the most important thing a client can do is just be vigilant. Make sure that you are reviewing your transaction history on a daily basis, especially for our commercial clients. And I say that because when ACH transactions post to a commercial client's account, some of those transactions are very time sensitive if they're fraudulent. We only have a window of 24 to 48 hours to identify the fraud and return the transaction. If we are outside of that window, then our chances of recovering that money for our client it reduces significantly. And so being vigilant and checking your account transaction history on a daily basis is probably the most important thing that you can do.
Perfect. So check daily, make sure you're within the window should something happen, and just regularly be aware of what's going on with your account. Excellent. Well, Deanna, I thank you so much for joining us on this special episode of the Pinnacle Fraudcast. And to learn more, head to pnsp.com/fraud center. Thank you.